The napkin was still folded in his lap when she called him weak in front of the entire restaurant. And what she did not know was that the man she just humiliated had spent the last 6 months learning how to be strong enough for a little girl who had nobody else in the world. The single dad did not raise his voice. He did not even look up right away. He just set his fork down slowly, the way a man does when he is counting to 10 inside his own chest. And that quiet moment right there is where this story really begins. 3 weeks earlier, his sister had signed him up for this blind date without asking. She said he needed to live again, not just survive. He had laughed it off at the time, but some tiny part of him, the part that still remembered what it felt like to be seen by someone, agreed to go. He arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, wearing the only blazer he owned that did not have a coffee stain on the sleeve, and he sat there rehearsing small talk like a man preparing for a job interview he desperately needed to pass. Her name was Renata, and she walked in like she already owned the room. She was polished, sharp-tongued, and within the first 10 minutes she had asked him 3 different times what he did for a living, as if his answer would determine whether she stayed for dessert. When he told her he worked nights stocking shelves at a grocery store so he could be home during the day for his daughter, something in her expression changed, and not for the better. "So you're basically a stay-at-home dad who moonlights?" she said, loud enough for the table next to them to hear, and she laughed like it was the funniest thing she had heard all week. He felt his ears go hot. He thought about his daughter, 6 years old, waiting at home with his elderly neighbor, probably asking what time Daddy would be back to tuck her in. He thought about the promise he made himself the day his wife left, that he would never let anyone make him feel small in front of her again, even if she was not in the room to see it. But he stayed calm. He always stayed calm now, because rage was a luxury he could no longer afford. Renata kept going, needling him about his second-hand watch, his rented apartment, his lack of what she called ambition, and just when he was about to quietly excuse himself and go home to the one person who never once made him feel unworthy, a commotion broke out 2 tables away. A young waiter, barely out of high school by the look of him, dropped a full tray of drinks, and an older man at a nearby table shot up out of his chair, face red with fury, grabbing the boy by the collar of his shirt. "You clumsy idiot! Do you know how much that suit cost me?" The man shouted, and the whole restaurant went silent except for the boy's frightened breathing. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. Renata actually leaned toward the single dad and whispered, half laughing, "Well, aren't you going to do something, big man? Or are you too weak for that too?" And that was the moment everything changed. The single dad stood up, not fast, not dramatic, just steady, the way a man stands when he has made peace with who he is. He walked straight over to the table, gently placed his hand on the older man's wrist, and said in a voice that was calm but carried through the entire room, "Let go of him, right now." The older man turned, ready to unleash his anger on this new target. But something in the single dad's eyes made him pause. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe it was the complete absence of fear. "This isn't your business," the man snapped, though his grip loosened slightly. "It is now," the single dad answered, "because you're scaring a kid who is just trying to do his job, and where I come from, that is everyone's business." The waiter's hands were shaking so badly he could barely stand, and the single dad turned to him first, his voice softening completely, like he was talking to his own daughter after a nightmare. "Hey, look at me. You're okay. Accidents happen. Nobody is going to hurt you." The boy's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from the simple shock of someone actually protecting him. The manager finally rushed over, apologizing frantically. But the single dad held up a hand and asked instead if the boy was all right, if he needed a moment, if someone could get him a glass of water. The older man, humiliated now that the whole restaurant was watching him instead of the boy, muttered something about ruining his evening and stormed toward the exit. But before he reached the door, an elderly woman sitting near the window stood up from her table and started clapping. Slowly, one by one, other guests joined in, until the entire restaurant was applauding, not for a hero in a movie, but for an ordinary man who simply refused to let cruelty go unanswered. Renata sat frozen at their table, her face pale, her earlier laughter completely gone. The single dad walked back, sat down across from her, and for a long moment he said nothing at all. Then he looked at her, not with anger, but with something closer to sadness, and said, "You called me weak because I choose patience over pride, because I would rather stock shelves at midnight than miss my daughter's bedtime story. But what you just watched, that is what strength actually looks like. It is not about being loud. It is about standing up when it matters, especially for people who cannot stand up for themselves." Renata opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time all evening, she had no clever remark, no sharp comment, nothing at all. The waiter approached their table a few minutes later, still visibly shaken, and quietly said, "Nobody has ever done that for me before." "Thank you, sir." The single dad smiled gently and told him, "Somebody should have a long time ago. Don't let anyone make you feel small for making an honest mistake." As the boy walked away, wiping his eyes, the manager came over personally and told the single dad that dinner was on the house that night, and that he hoped more people in this world were like him. Renata finally spoke, her voice small and different from before. "I'm sorry," she said. "I judged you the second you sat down, before I even knew anything real about you." The single dad nodded slowly. "Most people do," he said. "They see a tired man in an old blazer and decide that's the whole story. They never ask what he's tired from, or who he's tired for." He paused, then added quietly, "My daughter's mother left when she was 2 years old. Said raising a kid wasn't the life she signed up for. I work nights so I can be home during the day, because she has already lost one parent, and I refuse to let her feel like she lost two." Renata's eyes filled with tears she clearly was not expecting. "I had no idea," she whispered. "Nobody ever does," he replied. "Because I don't lead with my pain. I lead with showing up." Something shifted in Renata's face in that moment. Something honest and unguarded for the first time all night. She admitted quietly that she had been hurt badly in her last relationship, that a man had once promised her the world and left her with nothing but debt and broken trust, and that somewhere along the way she started measuring every man by his bank account because she was terrified of being fooled again. It did not excuse her cruelty, but it explained the fear hiding underneath it. They did not fall in love that night. This is not that kind of story. But something rare and real happened anyway. Two wounded people sat across from each other and, for the first time, actually saw one another. Before they left, Renata reached into her purse, pulled out a business card, and wrote something on the back. "This is my sister's number," she said. "She runs a small tutoring nonprofit, and they desperately need reliable people who understand what it means to actually show up for kids. I think you'd be perfect." Weeks later, the single dad found himself volunteering 2 evenings a week, reading with children whose parents worked double shifts just like he once did. And one of those children was, unexpectedly, the same waiter from that restaurant who had a little brother struggling to read. The boy told him, with a shy smile, that he had gone home that night and told his whole family about the stranger who stood up for him when no one else would. He said it changed how he saw the world, how he wanted to treat people from that day forward. That is the quiet truth about kindness. It rarely ends where it happens. It travels through a waiter's trembling hands, through a stranger's changed heart, through a little girl who grows up watching her father choose gentleness, even when the world tempts him toward anger. The single dad never became famous for that night. Nobody filmed it, but everyone who was in that restaurant carried a piece of it home with them, and some of them, like Renata, carried it long enough to become better people because of it. Real strength was never about raising your voice or proving a point. It was about a tired father in a second-hand blazer who chose, again and again, to protect people who could not protect themselves, even the very people who had just mocked him. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a comment to share your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Wings of Kindness for more inspiring stories. Remember, even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life forever.